This month, I realised that I played an open world video game wrong. To get back my gaming momentum, I picked out Sonic Frontiers, because I wanted something that I knew I'd enjoy. I've got over 100 hours in this game, I love it, it was one of my favourite modern Sonic games ever. By the second island though, as I raced across the sand searching for random Knuckles medals, I realised I wasn't having much fun. Why was that, when I know I love this game? In the past I spent hundreds of hours frolicking across these open zones with carefree abandon, so why wasn't I finding that same deep down gut feeling of enjoyment like I had a dozen times before? What was different? The answer I found changed how I think of my approach to open world games, but the feature that triggered the change was so small, most players and game developers barely even give it a second thought. That is, the Jukebox. My interaction with this throwaway feature taught me one of the most important things that makes me want to play open world games. It turned out I was playing this game with the wrong motivation. The reason the Jukebox had such a big impact comes down to what drives me as a gamer. So the question for you is, when a game drops you in a huge open world map and tells you, do whatever you want, what is it deep down that motivates you to play? Is it the story beats, the collectibles, or just the vibes of existing in a wide open digital space? After thinking about this for a while, I believe our motivations in open world spaces comes down to one of two choices, intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. So let's put on our running shoes and race across Sonic Frontiers to learn more about what this means about what motivates us as gamers, and why that Jukebox taught me how to enjoy the game again. After a hard prior month, I was exhausted, so I needed a game that I genuinely enjoyed, so I could get an easy win under my belt and restore my energy. That was why I picked Sonic Frontiers. But as I mentioned before, it wasn't long before I realised that I just wasn't having as much fun. I was groaning in frustration at enemy encounters, grumbling about poorly placed rail paths, and generally just being annoyed by many of the game's quirks, rather than before, where those same quirks were charming or otherwise inoffensive. I played it for over 100 hours, so I know all of these foibles inside and out, and I love the game regardless. So what the heck is happening that my opinion is doing a complete 180-degree turn here? On reflection, I realised that the difference was that I was playing the game with a feeling of obligation, and that ties into the game's very nature as a series of open worlds, or open zones as Frontiers likes to call them. I think the problem came down to what I mentioned earlier, that problem of extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. But what do I mean by that? In a nutshell, extrinsic motivations are the goals that you're given by the game itself to reach a win state. In Frontiers' case, that was often collect X number of collectibles, beat the goal in Y amount of time, and so on. It refers to goals that are given to you, usually in the form of a list of objectives. In contrast, intrinsic motivations are inherently just vibes. Basically, what do you want to get out of the experience? Do you want to go see what's on the other side of that cliff or talk to that NPC? Not because the game wants you to, but merely because you want to do it. It's about the choice being entirely yours. These are the goals that are driven, not by the game, but simply by your own desires. Because of the nature of how I've been playing games, I'm placing disproportionate value on extrinsic goals. I'm going in with a mindset of making it to the end and blasting through the missions to simply get to my destination. And in open world games, that tends not to be the best way to play. These games, by their very nature, are designed to ask, what do you want to do? In open world games, the enjoyment is in the journey and not the destination. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of value in linear games and in game objectives in general. A lot of the time, when you want to sit back and turn your brain off and just get to the end and play something uncomplicated, there's a nobleness to just getting engrossed in gaining mastery, playing something start to finish, and having a blast getting there. It's more so that I realise that there are different designs suitable for different tasks here. Tying this back to Sonic Frontiers, I'm realising that the reason that I wasn't having fun with the game this time around is because I went into the game tied to extrinsic motivations. Basically, I just wanted to beat the game and tick its objectives off like a checklist. Frontiers itself is in fact designed with lots of these extrinsic goals in mind. You collect cogs to enter stages and beat those for keys to collect Chaos Emeralds. You collect memory tokens to unlock the next character cutscene, and so on. There's a lot of extrinsic motivation to be had here, and it keeps the game going along at a nice pace exactly as intended. But in playing Sonic in this manner, motivated by those goals, I was having a shallower experience. Enemies became frustrations and not distractions, those rail paths became obstacles and not playgrounds, and even traversal itself began to feel almost just like a necessity to rattle off another objective, so I could draw closer to finishing the game. So I took a moment to reflect and ask myself, why am I not having a good time with this game that I love? What was it that I truly remembered the most about Frontiers that gave me these fondest feelings? And then I found myself remembering that odd, obscure, throwaway feature. It was added in an update to give players just a little bit more to do. I remembered that Jukebox. It's no secret that Sonic games have always had incredible soundtracks, and I would go so far to say as they are my favourite soundtracks in all of gaming. I smiled as I remembered gallivanting across the wide open flower meadows of Oranos Island, blasting out Live and Learn at full volume, and I was simply sprinting wherever Sonic's feet took me, vibing and platforming along wherever I wanted, with no real rush to get to the next objective, just driven by the energy of whatever pumping butt rock chorus was blasting out in that moment. In these moments, I was definitely intrinsically motivated. I didn't care about memory tokens, Chaos Emerald vaults or boss cogwheels, but I collected a bunch of them anyway because I was just having so much fun just vibing. Those frustrating rail paths that I mentioned earlier were now fun little playground toys to bounce around. The enemies were little mini distractions where I could show a little bit of style and pizzazz to dispatch them while looking cool doing it. Going about the map while listening to some of my favourite songs was just a vibe. I was still playing the game and doing its objectives, but not because the game was telling me to. I think in its own way, the Jukebox was teaching me how to have fun. I realised that while playing the game while extrinsically motivated and just ticking off the objectives like a checklist, I was eliminating the whimsy, and I wasn't really playing to the strengths of Frontier's open world designs. Open worlds tend to be at their strongest with intrinsic motivation in mind. That's not to say there's no objectives to these games, heck, even Breath of the Wild has the goal of defeating Ganon. But instead, I'm saying that the most fun I have with open world games is in that sense of wonder, whimsy and discovery, in just going. The way I approach an open world is just to exist and immerse myself in a large world where I want to go places and do things just because. That's not to say that intrinsic motivation is perfect for every game. For example, I don't think that an arcade-style FPS or a racing game would really benefit without an objective. For some games, you want to do something, be it shooting demons or getting first place in a Grand Prix. There is no right or wrong answer as to which is better, more so that each form of motivation has its own time and place where it is most appropriate, and usually in an open world game it's all about that intrinsic motivation. In Sonic Frontier's case, I think it's confused between both intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, because the game is designed as an open world game but with a checklist, which is why, coming back to my initial opening, I played it wrong. In playing to the objectives, I was robbing myself of joy and whimsy, not realising that this game was a playground and not an obstacle course. That's why the Jukebox made the difference. That little bit of extra vibe that was offered by this seemingly small addition. It tipped the scale from what was a strictly middle-of-the-road collectathon platforming experience into peak open-world joy. I learned that the way I have fun in an open-world game like Sonic Frontiers is just to be me, go wherever I want to go and do whatever I want to do. For me, games like this are at their strongest when I am intrinsically motivated, when I am playing through my very soul. Reflecting on Sonic Frontiers, I realised that the reason I stopped having fun for a moment is because I was, yes, playing the game wrong. In trying to handle it as a straightforward set of boxes to tick, to beat the game and move on, I was playing almost exclusively into its weaknesses. But when I stopped and thought about what I really loved about the game, it was the Jukebox that made me remember just how much fun it really was just to get lost in the world, chasing whatever objectives I wanted to chase while blasting classic Sonic bangers in the background. So when I took another look and played the game that way again, I found the game I loved from the start, still there, still fun and still engrossing. I had just been playing it with the wrong approach. The lesson is, before you write a game off, maybe you should ask yourself, are you actually playing a bad game, or are you meeting the game with the wrong motivation?